Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Hannah Clarke and Rowan Baxter? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Hannah Clarke was born on September 8, 1988, in Brisbane, Australia. Her father's name was Lloyd, and her mother's name was Susanna. In high school, Hannah was an athlete. She was on the trampoline team. After graduating, Hannah found a job as a teacher at a police and community youth club. In 2008, when Hannah was 20 years old, she met a 31-year-old man named Rowan Baxter. He had taken a job as a boxing instructor at the same place where Hannah worked. Rowan was born on May 9, 1977, in New Zealand. He was married at the time he met Hannah. Rowan and his wife had a son together. The Baxter family moved from New Zealand to Australia in 2007. Rowan had mistreated and threatened his wife. She wanted to leave him, but was afraid. Hannah and Rowan became romantically involved, so Rowan decided that he would separate from his wife. The couple eventually moved into a residence in Brisbane. Rowan worked as a salesperson for a pharmaceutical company. Hannah worked in a shopping mall. In October of 2012, the couple married. Hannah had a daughter named Alia on April 10, 2013. After she was born, Rowan refused to pay any child support to his ex-wife for his son. Rowan and Hannah decided they wanted to open their own gym, but they didn't have enough money. They ended up using money from investors, including Hannah's parents. They put in $18,000. The gym was not profitable. The Baxters were behind on their bills. Hannah's parents would often pay the rent for the gym, as well as other expenses. On March 19, 2015, Hannah had another daughter. Her name was Leanna. Hannah had her third child, a son named Trey, on December 4, 2016. The Baxter family continued to struggle financially due to the poor performance of their business. Rowan was not a good manager of the gym. He was often rude to current and potential members. A distorted interpretation of the popular workout phrase, "no pain, no gain," was evident in his behavior. Rowan was the pain that destroyed his gain. In December of 2019, the business failed, but the Baxters still owed investors about $75,000. Due to a history of mistreatment, which I'll talk more about in the analysis, Hannah decided that she was going to leave Rowan. On December 5, 2019, Hannah took her children and moved out of the house she shared with Rowan. The next day, she went to a police station looking for a domestic violence order. Ultimately, she decided against it due to concerns that getting one would only infuriate Rowan. Hannah moved in with her parents a few days later. They lived in the Camp Hill suburb of Brisbane. On December 22, 2019, Rowan contacted a government agency trying to get financial assistance by saying that he was the full-time caregiver of the children. In reality, Hannah was the full-time caregiver. On December 24, Hannah allowed Rowan to visit the children for Christmas. He gave them gift cards. However, there was no money on the cards. The children didn't find this out until later. On December 26, Rowan took his daughter, Leanna, from Hannah and refused to give her back. Hannah changed her mind about the domestic violence order. She obtained one on December 29, and the police picked up her daughter from Rowan. In late January 2020, the Baxters worked out a custody arrangement. Hannah had primary custody of the children, and Rowan was to pay $360 a month in child support. He told acquaintances that his children had been taken from him, and he would not stop fighting until he had them 50% of the time. On January 31, after Rowan dropped off his son late to Hannah, he allegedly grabbed Hannah's wrist. She accused him of domestic violence. On February 9, Rowan was charged with common assault, but he was immediately granted bail. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On February 17, 2020, Rowan went to a hardware store and purchased a gas can and zip ties. Later, he went to his aunt's residence and asked to borrow her Nissan Murano SUV for a couple of days. On February 18, he went to a service station in the morning and put gasoline in the can. At 3:28 p.m., Rowan called Youth and Family Services and asked about a men's support program. At 4 p.m., he called a counseling referral service for men called Men's Line. He asked them about participating in a 10-week program. At 6:25 p.m., Rowan called a friend of his and expressed frustration about the level of communication he had with his children. Referring to Hannah, he said, quote, "Everything she is doing is working," unquote. Later, Rowan called another friend and told him he had lost everything. He had no money, he did not have his children, and he had been served with an eviction notice. That night, Rowan communicated with his children via FaceTime, but he cried instead of talking to them. Hannah told him to hang up if he wasn't going to talk. On February 19, 2020, Rowan left his house in the Nissan Murano at 6:48 a.m. He went to a cafe in Camp Hill and drank coffee. He then drove to the residence of the Clarkes, where Hannah and the children were living. Hannah was in her silver Kia Sportage SUV with her 3 children. As soon as she started the vehicle, Rowan jumped in the passenger seat, holding the gas can. Hannah screamed at him to get out of the vehicle, but he told her to drive. At 8:25 a.m., Hannah screamed at a neighbor, quote, "Call the police. He's going to kill me. He's poured petrol on me," unquote. Petrol is another word for gasoline. The neighbor saw that Rowan was physically restraining Hannah. In this moment, the SUV burst into flames. The neighbor ran to the vehicle to help, but he was burned by the fire. Hannah was on fire and exited the vehicle. Rowan also exited the vehicle. He too was on fire. At this point, Hannah's vehicle exploded. One witness said, quote, "It sounded like a bomb went off. It was so loud I felt shockwaves. The car was engulfed in flames almost instantly," unquote. Several Good Samaritans tried to help, but there was little they could do. There was simply too much heat from the fire. Hannah told witnesses that Rowan squirted gasoline on her and the children and threw a lighter at the car. When emergency services arrived, they quickly put the fire out and provided aid to the Baxter family. Rowan was pronounced dead at 9:14 a.m. He technically died from stabbing himself in the chest with a knife at the scene, but the burns would have killed him anyway. The children were pronounced dead at 9:53 a.m. The cause of death was the same for all 3, thermal injuries and inhalation of smoke. Hannah was still alive, but she had burns to 97% of her body. Talking about Rowan, she told the paramedics, quote, "I hope he survives and rots in jail for the rest of his life," unquote. Hannah Clarke was taken to the hospital, where she died at 5:40 p.m. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Many people who had interacted with Rowan Baxter offered descriptions of him. Here are just a few of the things they said. Rowan did not like to be told no. He was controlling, driven, envious, angry, confrontational, deceptive, manipulative, and over-competitive. He would accuse opponents of cheating if he was defeated in any type of competition. Rowan considered himself to be an alpha male. He had a tendency to take advantage of others financially and burn bridges. He only contacted friends when he needed something. Rowan frequently portrayed himself as the victim, and he had no insight. If he thought it was to his advantage, he would pretend to cry, but he was unconvincing. Based on the descriptions offered, Rowan appeared to have several characteristics of narcissism and psychopathy. He was self-centered, arrogant, grandiose, envious, manipulative, had a sense of entitlement, believed himself to be special, and lacked empathy. He was also impulsive, irresponsible, and willing to be violent. Item number 2. As I mentioned in the background, Hannah decided to leave Rowan due to him mistreating her repeatedly. Here are a few examples of Rowan's maladaptive behavior in relation to his family. Rowan was demanding and controlling with Hannah. He criticized her in front of her relatives and eventually made it difficult for her to talk to her brother. Rowan contacted Hannah constantly when she was on vacation. He always wanted to know where she was and who she was with. He demanded that they have a joint Facebook page. Hannah was not permitted to have her own. He told her what she was allowed to eat, Rowan ordered Hannah not to wear shorts, short skirts, or anything that was the color pink. She was permitted to wear a bikini only when on the beach. Rowan was not supportive at all to Hannah. He minimized her achievements and tried to make her feel inadequate. Rowan expected Hannah to have sex every day. Specifically, he wanted her to have sex with him. When Hannah would refuse Rowan's advances, he would throw a temper tantrum. Sometimes he would go days without talking to her as a penalty. On other occasions, he would threaten to harm himself. Rowan was harsh with his children. For example, if they didn't put their toys away quickly enough, he would throw the toys in the garbage. During the time that Rowan was separated from Hannah, he would reach out to acquaintances and try to get them on his side. Like he would tell them how terrible Hannah was. He also wanted these acquaintances to convince Hannah to reunite with him. So he believed that she was terrible, but he also wanted to be with her. Eventually, Rowan became physically violent. On one occasion, he slammed a gate on Hannah's leg. At another time, he pushed her into a wall. Rowan started spying on Hannah in a few different ways. He gained access to her Instagram account, read her text messages while she was sleeping, and planted recording devices in her house and in her vehicle. To explain how he had access to these recordings, he told people that one of his daughters made them. Item number 3, was there anything that Hannah could have done to prevent this horrible crime? I believe that Hannah was in an impossible situation. She had been manipulated for a long time in the relationship. Hannah was fearful about provoking Rowan in any way. Prior to the separation, Hannah asked Rowan to seek mental health counseling. She really hoped that he was capable of changing. Rowan refused to make any efforts to modify his behavior, and Hannah lost hope. He actually became worse and demonstrated increasingly demanding, paranoid, and dramatic behavior. Eventually, Hannah realized how dangerous Rowan was. 9 days before the murders, Hannah told a coworker that if she and Rowan were ever alone together, she had no doubt Rowan would kill her. The problem for Hannah was that she could not get help fast enough. Law enforcement moved too slowly, and there was no way for her to get protection from Rowan in time. This is a common problem for victims of domestic violence. When they realize they are in danger, it takes too long to obtain assistance. Item number 4, there is one particular failure in this case that highlights what Hannah was up against as far as convincing people about Rowan's power of manipulation. During the separation, Rowan was meeting with a doctoral-level mental health clinician. On January 21, 2020, about a month before the murders, he convinced the clinician to write a letter on his behalf. Rowan had only attended 6 sessions. The clinician indicated that she had no concerns about Rowan's mental health. She went on to suggest that he was coping remarkably well with the failure of his marriage, and it would be ideal if he could resume contact with his children. This clinician had a lot of explaining to do at the coronial inquest following the murders. This is yet another example of how mental health assessment is ineffective when dealing with people who are motivated to lie. Now moving to my final thoughts. What lesson can be learned from this case? I think the lesson here is not to underestimate characteristics like self-centeredness, vindictiveness, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of empathy. Rowan often threatened to bring harm to himself when he didn't get his way, but considering the narcissistic traits he possessed, harming others was always an option for him. He was willing to destroy himself, but he wasn't going to allow others to survive if he made that decision. If Rowan was going to lose, everyone was going to lose. That was the only way he could prevent being defeated in what he viewed as a competition. In his final hours, when he was calling around about attending programs for men, he wasn't trying to save his family. He was trying to save himself. Once he committed to no longer existing, it was nothing for him to wipe out his entire family. They were just objects to him the entire time. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the case of Hannah Clarke and Rowan Baxter. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.